Is deafness a disability? The Oxford Dictionary defines disability as a physical or mental condition that limits a person's movements, senses, or activities. It is then further described as being a handicap or disadvantage that is legalised by the law. It is recognised with legislation to protect those who have it. Two main characteristics of a disability is the fact that it has protective legislation in order to deter discrimination against those who have a certain specific condition. Another aspect is their continuous fight for equality. This can be seen through sports teams and the Paralympics. Deafness was originally considered a disability under the Disability Discrimination Act of 1995, which was later replaced by the Equality Act of 2010. These acts mean there is no tolerance towards discrimination towards those who have disabilities and denying them access to services and goods such as education. The definition of disability under legislation also covers those who do not consider themselves to have a disability. The Oxford Dictionary defines impairment as a state of being physically impaired, especially in a specified faculty, such as sensory, and provides the example of a physical or mental impairment. The medical model is a model where deafness is seen as a problem. If it cannot be cured, it must be aided. This is often shared by medical professionals and the hearing community. It is an outdated model and strong connotations as deafness being a problem rather than something that should be embraced and accepted. Gregory strongly states that the diagnosis and degree of deafness in a child is a medical issue. This shows that she takes the medical model perspective when talking about deafness. Gregory further backs up the medical model ideology, where she states that deafness is presented as an illness where at best a cure is sought of, where every effort is made to compensate for the degree of deafness. This shows that she further backs up the medical model, where she believes that if it cannot be cured, it must be aided. The social model is a modern-day approach which is inclusive of everyone in society. It does not see a person with a disability as the problem, but society who cannot accept it. The social model also believes that if adaptations need to be made in order for equality to be sought, then it should be done by society, not the person with a disability. The author of Deaf in America, Voices from a Culture, speaks of a chance meeting with an acquaintance on the BART, which is a tube station in America. He speaks of how his deaf acquaintance claims the handicap allowance, which allows him to get cheaper transport on the train. He also speaks of how his acquaintance does not see himself as disabled, but does view the blind as disabled. He also speaks of how he can understand why the blind would claim for it, but he also explains that he did not claim for it, he was offered it by the trams system. Corker makes it clear that she does not view the deaf and disabled as the same category. This is where she states that contemporary relationships between deaf and disabled people are fractured. This categorises them as two different, separate people in society. She then speaks of how deaf people may feel excluded from the disability movement, as the definition that the disability give themselves in the disability movement does not cover those with a hearing loss or impairment. Corker outlines possible effects that deafness may have on a child, such as not verbally being able to communicate or understand their emotions, but they may be able to do this through more visual language, such as sign or strong facial expression. She then states that strong facial expression and strong sign has a strong meaning. Hearing people often have little or none at all communication or interaction with the deaf community. This can mean that their perceptions around what being deaf and deaf people are like is often formed by other forms, such as the media. This can have a negative effect, as the media often goes for the worst case scenario, with the most drama around it. Despite the 2010 Equality Act, deaf people often face discrimination on a daily basis, such as not being able to join the army, which is a common career path, as deafness is seen as an automatic barrier. This is because the army view it as impractical to have deaf people within their organisation. Deaf people often describe themselves as the last to know. This is because when communicating with a hearing person, if they ask for clarification, they'll often be told, "I'll tell you later," which they never are. This can lead to a loss of information, understanding and clarification in everyday life. From the medical perspective, deafness is a disability. This can be because it can be seen there is communication issues between deaf people and hearing people when expressing emotions. However, this can be resolved through strong facial expression and sign. However, looking at deafness on a more personal level, it is not a disability. This could be seen from what the deaf community have achieved for themselves over the years, making them no different from the hearing community. Despite what the hearing community think, which must seem as impossible to them, there are many famous musicians who are deaf. For example, Mandy Harvey is a deaf ASL user. She has just released her album in spring this year and is currently working on a Christmas album. This goes against any perceptions that the hearing community may have about deaf people not being able to understand or influence music as they cannot hear it. From the reading and research I have done, I have come to the conclusion that deafness is not a disability. However, I've also come to the conclusion that there is a negative connotation around the word disability. This is caused by the media and the negative output that it produces to the hearing community who do not participate with the deaf community. From being in a school that had a deaf unit, which meant I was around deaf children, deaf teachers and teachers of the deaf regularly, allowed me to see that deafness really does not prevent people from living normal everyday lives. An example of this is a local teacher who was a maths teacher who travelled around the local area providing extra support to both hearing and deaf children.